welcome to Keep This in Mind, brought to you by SpectHealth.com. I am David Specht, your host today, and today is a very special show. I know I say they're all special show because I'm in them, but it's really special. I can Ed might let you. I've been waiting for a long time to get this guy on my show, but
Yeah.
really and truly, I've got a good friend of mine. He may not even know our first interaction because we've been friends since 2020.
Oh,
I had signed up for a seminar in Phoenix, Arizona with Coach Michael Burt. And all of a sudden, I received a phone call from an Eric White that said, "Hey, how can we serve you, David?" And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. But let me tell you just a little bit more about Eric. Eric is, but a lot of people may not know, Eric was a SEC basketball coach. He's a business
yeah.
coach. He's a health coach. I see a trend starting here. The word coach just keeps
Yeah.
coming up and coming up. But really and truly, Eric is a connector. He's a person connector. And Eric, I just want to talk to you because you and I have gone through some similar life changes, right? We're in that middle-ish lifespan. Again, if I doubled the number, I'd be scared of what the number is that my age would be. But we have gone through some major life changes in the last 5 to 10 years that weren't expected. It wasn't part of the plan. And so I
Right.
just want you to speak to the audience about, you know, how things your life has gone, especially the last several months and the last couple of years, but really and truly how this was your plan, the plan changed and the plan continues to evolve. What kind of give us a little bit of background on your story there?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of changes and transitions that were unwanted, undesirable, unexpected, and sometimes sudden. Um, and so I think even going back to when I was young in age, 15, 16, I always had this mentality of I was always going to turn a bad situation into a win. I was always going to try to fail forward. I was always going to turn a negative into a positive. That's just always been a mindset. There was something that was birthed into me, or born inside of me. I guess it was a gifting that I got when I was born. And as a basketball coach, you're constantly analyzing your team's performance, the performance of a staff, the program as a whole. And there were many nights, many weeks where you might lose two out of three games, or 3 out of 5, or you might go on a week long road trip and lose both games or something. Just some kind of bad spin. And so you had to learn how to right the ship. You had to learn how to take where you were currently at and turn it into a positive. So I don't know. It's just, David, it's interesting because my friends were recently just joking with me. Oh, E. White's got 9 lives, and it's just I always end up back on my feet somehow, and I do think I do think there's a spiritual side of that, um, and but then I also think there's some grit and persistence and um, just refusing to lay down and quit, right? Despite what you're going through.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say too, in this day and age, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work for somebody else, there's a lot more uncertainty that
Yeah.
things can change radically in a short amount of time. Um, I think about how COVID really accelerated some changes, right? Restaurants
Mm-hmm.
had to embrace takeout in a greater way. Things like DoorDash really exploded. But now they can't put the genie back into the bottle for wait staff and dining in and those things because it has been a radical shift and things can change really quickly. I think about how AI is now the buzzword and things like Chat GPT that can write your blog post for you, can write your resume for you, but that eliminates the need for human capital in some of these areas. And next thing you know, the guy that's said, man, I'm going to be a technical writer for all my life, or I'm going to be a journalist, or I'm going to be whatever. All of a sudden, he has this real possibility that his vocation may go away, that it may
Yeah.
just be eliminated. I mean, how many people that work for Amazon or Google now are looking for work elsewhere, and they thought, man, we made it, we made it big. We made it to the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
Kind of tell me about how navigating major change. What are the first things that go through your mind when you're faced with a major change?
Well, I love what Jocko Willick says. We shared this other day on the phone with each other. He has a concept called detachment. And if you don't know Jocko Willick, he's a Navy SEAL. He performed at the world class level, served in combat roles, led major offensive in some of the Gulf activities over there over the last 15, 20 years. But he has this concept called detachment. And it really is. I think the Navy SEALs are world class in mindset. I don't know how they came up with all the formulas they have, but I studied them a lot. And this detachment is the ability to detach yourself from the emotional part of the situation and understanding this is your current reality, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, and understanding how to accomplish the mission that you've been given. So, for me, I'm a dad. For me, I'm a husband. For me, I'm a Christ follower. My identity is real clear in my mind about who I am and where I need to focus my time and energy. But for a lot of people, it gets confusing in times of tribulation, to use a biblical term, but just a time of adversity and challenge. When you're told that you can't go to office anymore because of some pandemic, when you're faced with illness during the pandemic. Heather and I almost felt like we were going to go under. We had COVID for 6 or 8 weeks, and so we couldn't work. No, I mean, it's not that we didn't want to; we couldn't. But we physically could not work for almost 2 months. So, but what you got to do is understand this is a growth opportunity. When you're faced with these challenges, it is a chance to get better.
Mm.
It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to grow. It's a chance to experience something new. See, it's all about the mindset. But I do like this detachment idea because when I ended my career at Ole Miss, it was sudden. It was abrupt. It was unwanted. I got fired in the middle of a basketball season, which is really unheard of. And I had no idea it was coming, whether it was warranted or not. It's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast. But there I was in that office with no job, unexpectedly, and immediately, the true story. I was started taking notes on my legal pad, and the lady that fired me, we were actually having a positive conversation. I was taking notes, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm writing down some names of people I need to call about a job." Sitting in there while she was firing me, and that's my mindset. It's like, okay, this current reality. I just got fired. I've got to find a job pretty quick. Who are the people I can work with? Who can I reach out to? Who can I let know that would advocate for me? How can I start winning immediately?
Oh,
Now, yeah, and
that's
and because of that, that's how I found Coach Burt. He was the first person I called, and literally, as I was walking out the door after getting fired, I called him. I wasn't even at the building yet, and I said, "Man, I need a job. I just got let go. I don't know what to do."
mm,
And so that led to me being with him for 6 years, and what has been a life changing, life altering 6 years.
yeah.
It's so that's a little bit about how I handled it. Now, I did go 8 to 10 weeks and mourned. I mean, seriously, I had emotional breakdowns. I had physical breakdowns. I mean, it was not emotionally. I did not conquer it, but I did come out with a win. And I think the other thing, you got to understand that they can't eat you. Let's say you get fired. Let's say man, I don't even know. I don't even want to speak negative into anybody's life, but that's why you got to clone who your identity is.
Mm.
Is I know whose I am, and if life ended, I know where I'm going to wake up in the morning. So there's really nothing here, even though it may be unpleasant, it may be bad, maybe terrible, whatever. I know that I'm going to wake up in heaven tomorrow if it all goes to zero, literally.
Uh,
So I think that's a mind. I think mindset and knowing where your identity is placed is critical.
yeah, let's. I want to kind of. There's a couple things that I want to pull out of what you just said. Number one, yeah, you may have mourned, but you were you were working towards what's next. You know,
Yeah.
something happened to you. There's a circumstance outside of your control. You know, but you didn't. I'm sure you assigned blame, but you didn't
Yeah.
let the blame game keep you from taking action because you knew you had responsibilities. I think that's one mindset that people need to have is okay, even if you feel like you're wronged in a situation, you still got to work on what's next. You know,
Yeah.
regardless. Number two, let's let the identity thing. I want to bring back out for the listener and the viewer, and that is if you know who you are
Hmm.
and whose you are, that you were created on, you know, like Chad Free says, created for on purpose for a purpose.
That's right.
That brings a certain level of confidence to your mindset because
Hmm.
you do see. My wife and I stand on Romans 8:28. You know, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord and called according to His purpose. But it doesn't say all things are good. It says
That's
all
right.
things work together for good. So even the bad things can work together for good, even if we can't see it on this side of heaven. And I think that type of mindset, and you illustrated it so beautifully, um, really does bring a level of confidence into what's next. Even if you're asking for a job, or even if you're seeking and you don't know what the what's next is, you know there is a next as long as you're still breathing. And like you said, if you're not breathing as a believer, you know that your what's next is your heavenly home. Let's talk about though, you know, if because yes, being a basketball coach and a business coach, you know, coordinator, sales, you know, all the hats are very similar. They are vastly different in how you approach people. I mean, we've heard Coach Burt talk about this a lot of the times that, you know, business people don't have structures and therefore you're having to teach all the things that you think should come naturally because you've been in the sports world. But talk about some of the skill sets that you have that you've seen translate no matter where you are. And because I think somebody who's contemplating a major change or maybe facing a major change that they may or may not be aware of at the moment, uh, needs to understand that they can bring their skill set to whatever's next. Kind of talk about that. Say, you know, what did you have at Ole Miss that you used to Coach Burt, and now that you're using in your in your new ventures?
Well, I think part of the process is to look inside and not go woe is me, but explore what is God trying to teach me through this. What is God trying to help me understand about myself? Where do I need to get better? Uh, where can I improve? Where should I be bringing more value to the people I'm around? Where did I go wrong? Where did I screw this up at? Right? Um, what did I contribute to the situation that led to these unwanted circumstances? Don't spend a lot of time there. Identify it and start moving forward. Now, I think that was the one question, David, I had when I called Coach Bird. I was like, man, I've been coaching college basketball for 25 years. That's all I've ever done. I don't even know what value I could bring to the to somebody outside of coaching basketball. I was terrified, honestly, to think about going into the business world, and I was super resistant to sales the first 6 months. I was terrified of it, but God was trying to teach me to overcome a fear and being able to jump on a podcast and share thoughts with somebody and share my faith. And so the first process of that was getting on the phone and calling David Specht, who I didn't know, right? Who might hang up on me or whatever, right? Like, and just overcoming this call reluctance to share value with people and to do business with people. And it's a real fear. I was 46 when I did that. I was one of 12 people in the entire world that did what I did at the level I did. I was an expert. And so when I came to coach, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'd go hide. I was like, but over time, I got over the fear, which has enabled me to understand what it is to push through those things and to overcome fear at deeper levels. So, I think that's so the skill sets I had was, I have an unbelievable desire to service the dream of another person at the highest level. I have a unique ability to listen to what somebody's trying to do and offer a solution to them that causes them to move, to get into action. I believe in living a meaningful life in relationship with other people in a way that helps us both bring value to the world and to get an on to get an increase in every area of our life.
That, that,
Um,
that's really good. And I want to. I keep backtracking, I know, but there was something that really stood out, and that was you didn't have the skill, and yet you were willing to learn the skill and overcome your own fears. I think, and I think this is something that you and I can agree on, that the older we get, the more
yeah,
reluctant to learning new skills we become, and
yeah,
yet learning new skills is vital to the process of growing as a person. Even if
yeah,
even if even if you're you know, Nick Saban's probably the master at it, right? Because as
yeah,
a coach, he can take a group of individuals, look at that group of individuals, and realize, okay, I've got to scheme this way for this set of skills that my people have. You know, whether it's airing out the ball more or grinding it out on the ground, or or we're going to run a defense like this, or we're going to run a defense like that. I think the ability to adapt to the cards that you're handed and actually skill up in those areas that are necessary are vital to it. But why are we, and this is a rhetorical question, but answer it if you can. Why are we, middle-aged guys so adverse to skilling up in an area that we're weak in?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think for me at some level was ego. Yeah, I worked in a career where I was very accomplished. I was fortunate to be a part of 5 or 6 championships. I coached a number of professional players. I was in the room with some of the top coaches in the world on a regular basis. And so, at some level, it was ego. But that goes back to what God was trying to do. He was trying to get me over myself. He was really trying to teach me what it's like to sacrifice um, what I personally want for the good of a group. Now, the other thing to add to this is I was not married when I was at Ole Miss. I had met Heather there, and this Heather and I now have been together almost 10 years. We've been married 6. So she and I were praying about next steps for us, and I was super reluctant to marry her in the position I was in because I worked 24/7, literally,
Mm.
and I just didn't think it would be fair to her to do that job while I was trying to. And I had never been married, never wanted to be married. I had no desire. Again, this is ego. But when I met her, I was like, okay, let's do this. So when I left, when I got fired at Ole Miss, I called her and I was like, baby, you're not gonna believe what happened today. She's like, what? I said, I got fired. And she said, you're kidding me. We were like, yes, because we were like, and that. So this is where being, I'm on this new term called abiding. If we are living a life where we are abiding with the presence of the Holy Spirit, um, there is a power in the middle of that because as I was approaching that period of time, I kept getting a sense something was stirring inside of me. Like, okay, get ready. It's a sudden change. Like, I didn't know what it was, right?
Hmm.
But I just had the sense that something was coming. So when it happened, I was like, okay, let's go. Does that make sense? Like, if
Oh,
so, I was already playing offense, even though I didn't even know what we were playing offense against. Right?
yes.
I was already moving, and that's man. There's just a power in. There's a pastor out in California by the name of Bill Johnson and Chris Valentin at Bethel Church who I've been studying, and they talk about this concept of abiding in the presence of the Holy Spirit, where you're just walking daily, aware of, and just in communion. And I've been working on trying to do that. And I'm telling you, I can't go back to the other way I was trying to live. Now that I'm trying to get so I think there's some value there for people who need to consider maybe going deeper there. But I can't even remember what you asked me now. I'm starting rambling, but I think so. For me, getting over the call reluctance and performing, when I got married, I had included 3 kids. I knew the number I needed to hit was a lot bigger than the number I'd ever hit in my life. and I was moving to a job that I was completely terrified about.
Mm.
I had no other choice but to just, I mean, I literally jumped in the deep end head first and was like, okay. And Heather and I joked right after, literally right after we got married. And I said, man, I hope the Bible's true. And she did. We just laughed. I mean, we were just totally lighthearted about it.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage people, if you're facing some kind of a difficult, it does not have to be drudgery or gloom and doom. Go into it with an expectancy that there's something new coming. There's something new birthing. God's going to do
Mhm.
something fresh and new. It is hard. Um, I'm not saying it's easy, but you've got to fight for that mentality, because in that God can do something really special
Yeah.
if you can allow yourself to think that way.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, to kind of share my major change story, it was a year ago that we moved to Tennessee. A year before that, Tennessee wasn't even on the radar. I mean, we
Yeah.
weren't even, that was not even a thing. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana, was going to be in Louisiana. Louisiana was my home. I was involved in the community. I mean, it was all there. And when we were going through the process of considering, counting the costs, considering what would that look like, we decided to go through Mark Batterson's book, uh, uh, Draw the Circle. And
Oh, good.
actually, yeah, draw the circle. It was the 40-day devotion that complements Circle Maker. And each night, Tina and I would pray, Lord, if this is your
Mm.
will, etc. And when we finally made the decision, because I basically got to the point where I told God, I said, look, you're going to have to put the stops on this because we're about to walk through a door. Shut the door
Yeah.
if it's not the door. And this was in December of 2021. In January 2022, we're up here looking at houses, and Tina says, we want this one. And I looked at her like she was nuts. She said, it's time. It's time. We've fleeced as much as we can fleece, if you understand the term
Yeah. Yeah.
about Gideon. And what was interesting is after we made that decision, number one, it was a 30-day whirlwind, but the person that I dreaded the most to tell that we were leaving was my pastor,
Mm.
because he and I were about, not just, I wasn't just parishioner and pastor, and I wasn't just board member to pastor. We were friends. We were close, and I had to keep this under wraps because you don't want to rock a ship that may not be rocked. You're just considering the rock. And when I went in to tell him that, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, David, I knew you were moving back in October. I just thought it was going to be Arizona. He said, God told me
Mm.
you were moving. And
Yeah.
so I think the Lord a lot of times does all this preparation and he's waiting on us. He's waiting
Yeah.
on us to step through what it is he has for us. And in the moment, it looks like a step backwards, but it's actually a step forward. You know,
Yeah.
you know, I did not know Eric White, the basketball coach, but I did know Eric White and do know Eric White, the man of God, the father, the health, business and health coach, and that Eric White is probably a vastly different person than was the guy on the other side of the basketball court. And
Yeah.
so, had it not been for the major change in your life, the Eric today wouldn't even exist. And that's
That's right.
that's really a big revelation to a lot of us, is that when we're faced with a very scary situation, and look, my legacy industry is one that's drawing up. Newspapers, if there's a newspaper around when my grandson graduates high school, I will be very surprised. So,
Yeah.
I have that cliff mentality coming up. But even that, I have this anticipation of what it can be, what things are going to look like, in the future, and how I'm going to be, how different I'm going to be. I'm not the same David I was when I was, 45 to 35 to 20, we're
Yeah.
you know, those two people probably don't even recognize each other.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that, and maybe you can talk this a little bit. You know, do you have any regrets being on the other side of the big change?
So none. Zero.
Right. But at the time, it was probably the scariest door you ever had to walk through was the major change walk door. So, talk a little bit about that. I kind of, I kind of baited you a little bit, I guess, by telling it, but really, hindsight's 2020. What would you say to Eric that's just about to lose his job?
Mm.
What would you say to him?
Ooh, that's a good question. Man, that's good. You stumped me. Um, I think when the first answer that came to mind was dive in.
Hmm.
When you asked me the question, the first thing that popped in my head was dive in. And I think there's a reluctance to people when we have sudden change in our life to dive in, to keep moving forward instead of going back. There is it's human instinct, by the way, is when we're faced with a change, is to go back into a period of time where we were comfortable or safe,
Hmm.
right? So the safest thing for me to do, perhaps, would be to go back to basketball, right, in an area where. But just because I can do that doesn't mean I should be doing it,
Hmm.
right? So, but yeah, I think diving in. That's I know that just because that popped in my head, and I think there's some offensive mindset there. I want to encourage people, whatever you're facing right now, think offensively. Think, how can I grow through this? How can I get better? How can I improve? How can I come out better in the next 90 days? You leveraging the situation, and and stay away from the victim mentality, which is the woe is me stuff. There's no good there. There's no life there. So I think that's what I would encourage people on. Maybe that's what I would say to my old self. Is
Dive
that
dive in. I
yeah,
would.
maybe.
I, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I will say, based upon what you've already said, you probably would also add, it's okay to mourn for a moment, just as long as the mourning
Yeah.
doesn't keep you
Oh,
from.
it's good. Mm-hmm.
Because every
So
once, I'll tell you, anytime I tell this story a lot to my friends in business circles. When somebody gets fired,
mm-hmm.
for them it's an event. They walked in one day and all of a sudden they don't have a job.
Right.
For most people on the management or ownership side of that equation, it is a series that has led up to in a very emotional set of series, unless you just are a heartless
Yes.
individual. So for that, nobody, people don't generally feel bad for the owner who's doing the firing or the manager who's doing the firing, but they have this buildup. And one
Yeah.
of the that I used to have to do when I had to let somebody go was I would have to leave for a minute. I would have to leave
Yeah.
the office and go find a place to breathe.
Yeah.
You couldn't just move right on to the next one. Hey, you're gone. Let's move on. Let's get the new person in. We as human beings, we don't we don't we don't process that way. We have to process a major thing. For some people, it feels like they got punched in the gut when major life
Yeah.
happens. For some people, they might get nauseous. For other people, they might get mad. Everybody processes this differently, but everybody processes it. And you can't expect somebody, even when it's necessary, to just be able to move on. And I think that's the thing. Before you can dive in, you have to do at least a little bit of mourning or processing to be able to move into the next thing. Would you agree with
So
that?
100%, man. I think it resonated to me. My mind was going back to that time period. So the lady that fired me, she and I had a great relationship, and it was a weird circumstance. Those time period. She and I, we just had conversation, and she came to me the next day or so after. We kept having to meet and do stuff, and she said, "Man, we were all scared for you because we thought you were going to kick over and die from stress and anxiety. You're unhealthy. You look miserable. Whatever." And she said, um, "I mean, part of me wants to just pay for you to go to Florida for 2 weeks and do nothing, you know, and relax." And she said, "I'm commanding you to go somewhere and just rest,
Mm.
you know." And it was really the best advice I got during that. And so I did for 72 hours. I went to my apartment and I literally slept for 3 days. Heather would come over and bring food and check on me. And man, I got up after like 3 or 4 days, um, and it could just click. It was like I was like, okay, let's go, right? And there was a lot of nights, you know. I tell you the most powerful thing. I'll just share this. This is super transparent. I've told this to one other person maybe, but the times I had with God at night, overnight, during that initial month to 6 weeks, man, were some of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in my life, and it was almost worth going through the adversity.
Mm.
You gotta see this, man. I feel this so strong in my spirit. You gotta understand the time that you could spend with God during the transition when you got nothing else to do. Um, is a time where He can say, "Oh, man, come sit with me. Let me minister to you." Ooh, I'm about to get emotional. Let me let me minister to you. Let me spend time with you. Let me share with you what's on my heart for you. Let me just let's just be together. And man, it's just it would be worth it to go through something like that again just to have that time.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I mean, 100%. I wouldn't. I wouldn't trade anything for that.
Well, I think, yeah, the the scripture where it says, draw near to God and He'll draw near to you. We
Yes.
don't feel the need to draw near when everything's going right.
Yes. That's
So,
right.
so it is in the valleys where we feel Him the closest, because we are drawing nearly to Him, even if it's out of a place of pain, even out of anger. If we allow ourselves to open up and see Him with our spiritual eyes, you will see God in those moments
Yes.
the strongest.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm definitely tracking with that. I can tell you, in so many instances in my life at my lowest points, that's when He showed up the strongest.
Yeah, man. So
Sometimes,
good.
sometimes I think He needs to knock us off our high horse so we don't forget that He's there.
Yeah.
When we think we can, that's when we're at our most at our in our most vulnerable, when we think we can, because that's when we probably will get off kilter with a lot of things. Um,
That's good. It's real good.
I really do resonate with what you said about it's worth going through.
Yeah.
And I also believe that the word "through" is a pivotal part of that. It's not worth
Hmm.
going in; it's worth going through. You see,
Yes.
through brings the concept of there's another side to this. There's an exit, if you will, of this dark town, this dark valley. And while you're in it, you may not see the exit sign, but because God's there with you, you're going to go through. And so, again, I get back to the question I asked you before. What would you tell Eric from before the firing? The truth of the matter is, you did just tell him that. You just said it's worth it. It's worth it for your time with God. You're about to have an experience with God that like you have never experienced before, and you're going to say this was all worth it. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, to kind of put a bow on it, if you will, of our discussion today. Let's talk about the. I know not everybody who watches this on YouTube or listens to the podcast is a believer. I get that.
Okay.
But as a believer, we know that there's an advocate in Jesus Christ. We know that we have a God that loves us and has put us on this earth for a purpose, and an abundant purpose for that, on top of that. So, talk to the believer for just a minute about the changes that are coming. You
Yeah.
know, talk to the believer. Say, look, you may be facing a change that you don't even know about right now, and just kind of talk directly to them for a moment about what it's like. I won't. I'll shut up and listen to you now.
Well, I was this morning I was driving to work, and I've got a probably 5 or 6 song playlist that I listen, and it's praise and worship stuff. And what I'm trying to get into a mindset every morning is, um, I'm trying to understand how to speak into a situation, a circumstance, our life, with all the chaos that's going on in DC, and just it seems like our world's just spinning out of control. It's not, by the way. But you and I have to speak into that situation, um, with with what God's given us is His Spirit. You and I have our inside of us is the resurrection Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead. That says that in the Bible. We were given that, um, and we don't use it. We just let it sit there. I'm just as bad at it as anybody. If we could just take dominion over those things and the power that we have been given access to by God as His followers, man, if we could just live in obedience and speak truth in power into our lives and our situations, man, the whole world can change overnight. And so I just want to encourage you, regardless of where you find yourself, whether you're in the valley right now, maybe go through you're in the middle of it, like you're trying to figure it out, or you're on the mountaintop. I want to encourage you to start speaking and prophesying into your situation with the awareness that you are a Christ follower. You are a child of God, and God raised Jesus, His Son, from the dead, and He gave you the same resurrection Spirit. It's in your blood.
That's
Man,
awesome.
we're playing too small. God, we're playing way too small, David. I
I
mean, we're. we're just, and and so that's really. I just, and I want to encourage you. I know you wanted to speak to believers, but this on my heart, man. If you're on the fence about whether to trust God with your life, or Christianity's just, something doesn't sit well, you really got two choices: to partner with evil or to partner with good guys. And the good guys offer you peace, joy, love, gentleness, kindness, abundance. Is it going to be easy? No. Probably going to be persecuted some, yes. But we're not burning anything down. We're not killing people. We're not, and that's what evil is. Well, the Bethel Church, the ministry out there, has taught me this. If you choose to make choices and give evil dominion or pieces of your life, it's eventually going to destroy you. Look at our society and the people that are struggling with their identity and the evil that comes about because the spirit that's inside of them. It's not the people. It's not a gun. It's the spirit. It's the spirit of evil.
mm,
It's man trying to play God. It just can't work that way. It will eventually destroy you. So, I mean, if you're on the fence, I want you to think about what kind of eternity do you want to have? What kind of life do you want to have here and now? Um, our lives aren't perfect. I mean, David. I mean, but but the way we live our life is so much better than if you're not walking with a relationship to Jesus every day. It's just, man, I just, the more people that we can bring into the fold and partner with, the more chance we've got of changing the culture that we're walking through that's so evil,
mm.
manipulative, deceptive. It's got no political figure in mind. It's just, man, there's just, you see a school shooting in Nashville, and by a person whose identity is in question in their own mind. They've just been overwhelmed with the spirit of evil, and what do? They go kill.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so,
I,
that could go political. I'm not trying to get into the politics
no,
because it's got nothing to do with the politics, man. It's
no.
got everything to do with me and you surrendering our mind, will, and emotions every day at the foot of the cross. And man, I'm telling you, it takes me 4 times a day sometimes
Oh
because I
yeah,
just, yeah,
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
so I
We're,
hope, anyway, I want to share that. So,
this isn't it's certainly not we have arrived or have all the answers, but we do know who
mm,
does. And I would say, as we wrap it up, yeah, I get back. It was such a great phrase coined that, and it really impacted my life the first time I heard it, and that was, you were created on purpose for a purpose.
that's so
The truth,
good.
and the truth of the matter is, you're right. We all play too small. There's a world out there that desperately needs us to rise up. And I'm not talking about rise up in arms, and I'm not talking about rising up with, pitchforks. I'm talking about rising up and being the people of God that we're supposed to be, and
Yeah.
shining as a light in this world from a standpoint of, you know, we're too busy. We're too busy worrying about our shortcomings or the cliff that's coming up or that I lost my job or, you know, my kids aren't acting the way they're supposed to act or that my employees aren't, you know, we get so caught up in the minutia that we end up
Yeah.
playing small in the minutia.
Yeah.
Whereas,
That's right.
you know, we've
Good,
been
David.
called for a huge purpose, and that huge purpose is different for all of us. But here's the thing: we all have a huge purpose.
Yes.
We're not exempt. Yeah, I had a preacher one time say this, it was everybody laughed, and then they were kind of like, yeah, and it's in light of recent events, it may be a poor analogy, but he said, if you didn't have a purpose, then you would be struck dead at your conversion.
Yeah.
He said the job doesn't end there; it merely begins.
That's
You've
right.
been redeemed for a purpose.
That's right.
And I believe that, you know, as we talk again, I said this shows predominantly to people like you and I, but we still have a purpose. And
Yeah.
while it may not look like the purpose we had played up here originally, it's in no way less than. In fact, it's probably vastly more than we could ask or think
Yeah.
because God's the one who's planted it there.
That's right.
And so I would encourage our listeners, our viewers, step into your purpose.
That's
Seek
so good.
believer, seek God, step into your purpose, and whether it's what you thought it was going to be or not, understand that it's exactly where you're supposed to be in this season.
Yeah.
Eric,
It's good.
how can people find you if they want to find and follow you? What's the best ways?
Um, Man, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm trying to get my Instagram followers up. So if you've got if you got space in your friend group for me on Instagram, man, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. I'd be
Awesome.
plowing people about. I think it's at Coach E White. But yeah, man, there on Facebook, man. I for a period of time I was doing a lot of content, but I've been away because I'm not sure why. So this is going to stimulate me to get back in there in the game a little bit. So hope to see you on there. Man,
Awesome.
thanks so much for letting me do this. I had a blast.
Oh, this has been a great conversation. I'm so thankful that you made time out for me and us, all of you tens of people out there that are listening.
That's right.
All right. And
Yeah.
just
Hey, big shout out to Tom Hamill. If he's not watching this, he's in
there
big
you go.
trouble.
Yes, I'm sure Tom's watching. Um, and I'll close the show with the way I close every show. Applied knowledge is power. Not knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power. God bless.